higher from 1G, Chila TVS, some cost on your science because all the latest updates in America will subscribe and share on your study in your BTS already in feeling chimney and kind of one chummer. And the removal of a chief justice and all, bring a lot of councils and regional legal practitioners for Babon team. Now, the young one say all those people not a true support a their GM say second episode second no quite so no quite so that process no chance on form quite that. So the process in a council of state or chase or best serve even a chief justice a mammy to kuna one to the bossy and then let the babont no much saying a chief justice a mammy to kuna ne letter no the babont no. It was full of emotions or the emotions equal letting na same be bro can letter no or much the whole letter no campono. It was needless in fact so papa bien is also control letter no a yes sir office of the president no na questions am for a reason indicate akofo adwa kase na kanene bekasa. So right now no this legal practitioners in the air councils for just name them omunina Trump support at the GM. Yes, I bring kunkuti any process and much as a GM so bit my so and found say a man for the lawsuit against him no on so bit my so I need you.
Now, President John Mahama has responded to Chief Justice Getro Tokonu's request for copies of petitions seeking her removal. Tonight, the president releasing 3 separate petitions from 3 individuals who want the CJ out, but not before expressing his disappointment for the social media frenzy that preceded his receipt of the CJ's request, accusing the CJ of circulating the letter before he, the president, could, and I quote, review its content. Now, the president says because of that leak, it is now constrained to mark the document and again, quoting, as restricted. The president also in the letter indicates he is a step ahead of the CJ. This is why he indicates that he had sought consent of the Council of State to share copies of the petitions with the Chief Justice at least 48 hours before her letter asking for them. Now, in a rather generous response, the president gives the CJ 10 days to send in her comments instead of the 7 days she had originally requested. Now, she had earlier argued that both the petitions and her response were necessary for consultations under Article 1466 before any committee of inquiry is set up, and that she will be given, and indeed, in the president's response, he says that the CJ will be given full and fair opportunity to be heard, unquote. Let's get right into it. Justice Abdullah is a legal practitioner joining us for a bit more on this story. I appreciate you talking to us, counsel. But we've seen the president's response, and again, I've narrated bits and pieces of it for the purpose of our viewers who haven't come across it yet. What are your readings into his response to the CJ?
I think the entire issues surrounding the petition together with the Chief Justice letter and the response from the president could have been handled much better than currently unraveling. I mean, you could clearly see the displeasure in the authored letter of the presidency. I thought that perhaps even if the Chief Justice's office, the Chief Justice herself, aired the president knowing who he is. I know the president probably didn't even see the letter. But I think the letter could have addressed the issues without showing the level of sentiment that it did demonstrate. First of all, because the president's office is the highest office. The Chief Justice, of course, we are not dealing with a small office, but clearly the Chief Justice's letter was a bit rushed and quite emotional, because there's no way the president could have made any determination of a prima facie case against the Chief Justice without eliciting a response from the Chief Justice. And so it is on the basis of this that I say that the whole scenario could have been handled better. Let's not forget that the president, and indeed the presidency, has an obligation to inform us of happenings on every issue. It is in accord with the principles of transparency and indeed the good governance that once the president had received these petitions, it informed the people of Ghana that this is what is going on. And so I do not think that president's initial position was wrong in any way at all. If you read a letter authored by, or at least signed by Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, I think it was quite terse and straightforward that there has been petitions received and it's receiving attention. And that for me was apt because it didn't disclose the content of the petitions. It didn't talk about who the petitioners are. It didn't disclose anything beyond the fact that these petitions have been received. That is in accord with good governance and good conscience and indeed the rule of law, that we be informed of happenings in government. That's the only way we can hold our leaders accountable and indeed also participate in the democratic governance. And so, but one could clearly see that it appears from the reactions of the Chief Justice that it came along with a bit of emotions, as if the request that wouldn't have happened, that the decision would have been taken with or without that request. I do not think that that would have been correct, because there's no way a prima facie case will be handled without any response from the CJ, whether now or even in the future when she's requested to respond to the petition. So, it is on the basis of these that I think that as sensitive as the issues are, it could have been handled better. Now it has even turned political. We are now dealing with NDC against MPP, when in actual fact this should have been a purely legal issue.
I see. So which are you referring to as a motive? The Chief Justice's response or the President's letter in response to the Chief Justice?
First of all, as I've said, the President's reaction, the Chief Justice's letter was needless, because that point would have come to that point in the life of the petition for her removal, would have come there anyway. So it was quite needless. And that's why I say that one could clearly see that there was a bit of rush and emotions towards, with that letter. And hoping that the response from the presidency would have been relatively better. It also came with that same level of reaction, which shouldn't have been the case, particularly because it's coming from the office of the president. I think it could have easily addressed the issues without clear demonstrations of the emotional connection, and then there's a resentment that it addressed the letters from the Chief Justice. So it's more like reacting to the same level of emotion from the Chief Justice, which for me was not helpful in diplomatic cycles. That letter could have been appropriately address the same issues without necessarily having to.
I see. Counsel,
be emotive.
Indeed. Very well. Counsel, when you look side by side, the president's response and the declarations being sought with the suit at the Supreme Court, what do you think happens next, particularly to the suit?
Well, the suit does not in any way stop the process from going on until there's a positive pronouncement from the judiciary, from the court, ordering a stay of proceedings. Until that is done, even though we can understand that typically, at least as we witnessed under the earlier administration, once the suit is mounted, an unwilling president would tell you that he would want to wait until the outcome of the suit before any further decision is taken. But that in itself may not necessarily be the law as we know it to be until the court positively stays any proceedings on the issue going forward. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been the need for it. But of course, having said that, it does not also mean that when there's a suit, you act in a way that would jeopardize the possible outcome of that suit. And so there's a balancing act where you try to, the process would go on such that it does not jeopardize the action in court.
I see. But there are those who argue that by the president's action of providing the Chief Justice with the 3 petitions against her, the suit at the Supreme Court becomes moot. Where do you sit on that?
That, for me, is difficult to state at this moment, considering that there are a number of reliefs that are being sought. And so some of the reliefs may be quite right to put it the way you do, but I think that it is better to play the wait and see attitude, considering the multiplicity of the reliefs being
right. Sought. And then you mentioned earlier how it would appear that the situation is becoming the NPP against the NDC. How helpful is this to the situation in setting precedents, really?
So this is exactly why I am displeased with the entire processes. I mean, taking a political turn rather than being seen purely from the legal angle. As you rightly pointed out, there are currently about 2 or 3 different suits that have been filed, all of which are engineered by politically exposed persons, and the lawyers involved are politically known within the circles that they belong to. And so it tends to send a particular narrative out there. And even the discussions out there, you clearly can gauge the lawyers or leaders of each of the political parties' position based on the action that is going on. And so, and when you're able to predict the positions of each side as against the issues going on, it doesn't help. It doesn't help with in addressing the issues from a purely legalistic perspective, and because then everything becomes a political interpretation or rather than legal interpretation, and it muddies the waters, and it does not really help to come out with some if you like sustainable interpretations that can help guide all of us in future. Should anything of this nature ever crop.
Right. The president in his letter also makes reference to Article 146, where he really talks about confidentiality, not only to the person involved, but also to the documents and relevant materials pertaining to the petition or the case, so to speak. Is there justification for that?
Indeed, that is correct. That is correct. That's a correct position. And this is because, as I said earlier, this is a very sensitive issue. Whoever the petitioners are, will naturally have to be protected from being attacked unfairly by people who may want to do mischief. And so it is the reason why the law, as pronounced by the Supreme Court, says that the entire process, at least leading to the removal, has to be handled with this level of discretion to avoid anybody being unfairly attacked and all of that. And also it helps by not dividing the country, because once these matters come into the public domain, there's a level of information that has to come in within the public cycles. And so if you bring everything within the space, the public space, you may end up polarizing the discussions, and particularly because we already polarized politically. And so it is helpful that matters are handled with the level of discretion that it requires, so that by the time the outcome is known, would have at least been certain that that possible outcome was in accordance with the law and practices of this country. Because really, let's all remember that it is the tribunal that is set up comes from some of them are justices. In fact, 2 of them are supposed to be justices of the Supreme Court, and the Chief Justice is entitled to a lawyer, and so the process is quite transparent. If you look at least the tenets of the law, it's very transparent processes. So And I'm sure in future, when the outcome is already known, those who may be willing to apply for the proceedings would have the right to have them, and they'll be giving copies of the proceedings. But until then, it is always safer to protect the entire process from the level of antagonism and mischief that may come along with. And so it is indeed, for me, a good thing that it is handled with the level of discretion that we are seeing. But unfortunately, now some of the things are already in the public domain. But I think attempts would have to be made to continuously protect the process from abuse.
For your Kabimamin Kabiamum to which a sema a this council arches pay or nimdi Najumabo Bill our watchers say. Process a GM fast to be a process, papa. Na GM no crampon a president no Mahama. Najumi a fine too much. Because a president do a car on can't show crampo say, or the case be a comma a council of state elders on carry. Kautona partner ke UFO. But it's so you'll be out. What tia memoise? No nimde. No pagan and coso. Opposite democracy no. Ye ni intino. And until no matter this transparency at the eba bonting. See if the previous government na. On one chose about the UFO. Utu near the BBA partner oko. Utu near UFO na oko. Enti president no crampo no Mahama no dream papa woni trim ono kra na mo hu de ekobia na ene yaye pa say the president afa de ne legal ye nema legal na so MPP for se baby atoto bopa aba park ne so de ne political ba ne sa man no kre na wa de ne mumpi ba ne sa ma adesuade bi nye de MP mba na so se wo some kan say President bi o seti bi no president enchirima babeto president no dia dachi asembi no amanfo be use this president akasem so monhwe no bia use this president o set no ansa Kesi omo amamo ho anchiromo president na ye wosisi no adwen papa oni trim oni adwen boni mo bia. He is there to build the Ghana that we Ghanaians we want. Oni also be bua memono dia share political party bien munyam dia show no kwa ono ankasa ho munyam also be bua memono dia share the majority of Ghanaians are mohwehwe mo ampese Ghana koyi no also be bua man no ama ayeden aso many because there are a lot of people are do baby amompe do baby o meka wansem na so muku gina closed doors ana mo chese Nema president ni yedo ya dio wetima yisi na so publicly no omoba onye hwe de no waye ni 120 days de no wetima ye onye hwe o pebe bitina be kra yen san re-election na yan hwe se wo be wi ni a no mokeka nse bebre meanwhile agenda dan trim say president ni feel na the political party intimbra power nya agenda dan trim say president ni successful Emma Ghana for ye honto yo Ghana ya honchire yen no mutimi ntwa nturungum na mo political party mbra na mo ye ho be kire mo ye tiesi mu na mo baaye mo nya di bia eso ani bia Ghana for complain muso monti obia eno ho ani ngwase na maje no na still na moto ho ya mo se die mo dwin Ghana ho sin enkrofo anasa political party bia Once small free abemukra no 3 months kra mbai en mu ne we ti mo pa mo ha on sen mo ha pa ne sen so as you speak no a man for ka kire GM say unja yes no mo kaka no na wonim Ghana for do support na krampa enye bi ne the MPP for no mo kwa ya kwaji lawsuit legal council kire say lawsuit no metima kwaji now so and stop it president no power is in super the power is in super but yeah the need and the ma other arm of government but the power na the super into a lawsuit in a caucus and stop it the president from processing the way or no bedding or the Chief Justice everywhere say petition it to ma sa process no ntimi stop it. Won bit my amodie e wo court on so be na die o Jubilee House. And na obon price say adini ba be wie no na nkwen say the Ghana mu achetu there be. E be wie na Ghana for the night and support the way no man who say or yeah die way to benefit us, because there are a lot of petitions I hold their course even time na akufado ho no na so no na petitioners for no cause akufado ya church letter bro say Chief Justice free na so ente won ka be wi ase ni aboatogu now so President John Dramani Mahama HS were listening president. So the petition no behwe ne me wom ahu se o ampa bitima gina so Chief Justice edi and as intimi gina so Chief Justice edi. It is abide by the law. E o mranim se itimi yesade no. Ti ade na ade o mrem no ubuafu na church letter echo the office of the president. Kika kan sen bebre my president no ono mo days I'll find them responding. Like how do I want to say? So this council no say President John Dramani Mahama or in the right direction. Mani no mana bemumbu na Chief Justice ni letter the by bonteno needless for so being so more support no making sure that the right thing is done and found say the political party be feeling no. He is there to serve Ghanaians and MPP, because MPP no ntimi so many the panel na mo saying, because the more the panel no mo stay in a position for long. So what the pebia no dwen won say more atantan here or some of finding so many ways etimi kan she keba na budget kama say ba bonten mo say budget ni tantan as our budget mo budget here den ene subscribe na share na ma onu aso ye de enye binti afọ wanso na Akroma.